I was in Norfolk on December 7th, 1941, and our ship was immediately put into dry dock to have her bottom scraped so that we could go out and have a clean ship to go over into the Pacific. We went down through the Caribbean Sea, through the Panama, and out over to San Diego, at which time we escorted about 15 cargo ships that needed to be taken down to Australia. This was in January of 1942. In the Coral Sea, there were many scrapes that we had, and many times that we had to fly in and out of the Espiritu Santo, Ifeiti, Guadalcanal, and so forth area. But the first battle between aircraft carriers in World War II was at the Battle of the Coral Sea. I was a seaman at that time, and I heard something that I think is a scream right in the middle of battle. The Japs were shooting torpedoes at us, which they missed, but they hit us with some bombs. I'm sitting now, imagine this now, I'm sitting in the ready room where the torpedo plane pilots have their information given to them before they take off. And I'm connected to all the other ready rooms that the other pilots and crewmen are in, including air plot up in the tower, up in the island structure of the ship. All of a sudden, on the intercom system, this is what I heard. Air plot, this is ready room 3. A bomb just passed through here. Can I secure the phones? Can you imagine? Right in the middle of all this shooting and everything going on, this guy asked for permission to leave. We went up to Pearl Harbor. They put our ship in dry dock immediately, and the shipyard workers did a masterful job on that ship. We had sustained damage where we were leaking oil from the bowels of the ship because of the near misses. And they fixed that ship up in 3 days, where it would normally take them a couple months. We left. Why did we do that? We had broken the Japanese code and knew that the Japanese were coming to take over Midway. So we had to get our ships ready in a hurry. Now this was in the latter part of May 1942. As soon as that ship was out of the dry dock, we were underway and gone out to Midway. The Hornet and Enterprise were already out there. So we have 3 aircraft carriers. In the Battle of Midway, we had 41 of these airplanes, the old TBD airplane, go about 110 miles an hour, dripping wet. That means fast. And we lost 37 of them. But the diversionary flight of those 37 airplanes that went down drew all the Japanese fighters over to try to shoot them down. In the meantime, our SBDs, thank you, Frank, our SBDs and fighter planes are going over to where the Japanese carriers are. And that's why we sunk 4 Japanese carriers in the Battle of Midway, because of the diversionary and the loss of 37 TBDs. Believe me, that's what happened. Where was I? I wasn't assigned to fly that day. Lucky me. I was up in the island structure copying down information coming off the radar. Another funny thing happened. Captain Buckmaster told us to abandon ship. I was walking around on the flight deck trying to decide whether I was going to go over the side and join the rest of them that were already in the water. And I saw one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life right in the middle of a disaster. Man would come up to the side of the ship and put their shoes down, just like that, pairs, pairs, pairs. pairs, all along the deck, pairs of shoes. I saw an officer, I think he was a commander, came up, he had a 45 strapped on, took his 45 off, laid it down on the deck, took his shoes off, laid them down on the deck, just like that, and went over the side. Right behind him, an enlisted man. Came down, took his shoes off, laid them on the side of the deck, took the 45, strapped it on, went over the side. I was lucky to have been taken aboard the USS Benham. The Benham, I could cry about this. The minute I got aboard the Benham, one of the sailors who was a shipmate of mine told me, he says, you come over here and talk to this man. So I went over there. The man says, what size are you? And I told him, he says, you come along with me. Went down to his locker, he says, you can have anything in this locker that you'd like to have. Love. 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 We went back to Pearl Harbor, and I was reassigned to BT-6 on board the Hornet. And I got into this type of airplane right here, which was new in the fleet at that time. This is a TBF. Some of them were called TBMs, because not only Grumman made this airplane, but Martin made it also. Very fine airplane, very sturdy airplane, very strong and very large. I was assigned to Ensign Hoover. Well, Ensign Hoover decided that we were going to go out and fly this airplane. So we decided, well, I didn't decide, but he decided what he was going to do. He was going to take some water-filled bombs about so big and drop them on a little island out there that was full of birds. Bird Island, they call it. This is off of Kaneohe, Hawaii. So we're out there, and the first run, we're going towards this island. Mr. Hoover didn't know how to fly very good. He flew that airplane right into the water. We're going about 210, 220 miles, I don't know how far. But here I'm sitting in the turret back there, and all of a sudden, boom, we're in the water. Isn't that nice? We had to wait about 45 minutes before anybody even showed up. Come out and pick us up. Well, anyway, we learned a lesson right there. Ensign Hoover learned a lesson right there. We took off, went out to the Guadalcanal area. We were in a lot of different engagements out there, and I'm sure Frank will testify to this. A lot of different airplanes were lost, and we were in the Battle of Eastern Solomons and in the Battle of Santa Cruz. The second and the third aircraft carrier to aircraft carrier battle in World War II. There were only 5 of them, and I was in 4 of them. On October 26, 1942, we took off from the Hornet and went out to try to get old Abe. He was one of the Japanese officers who was running a fleet coming down towards Guadalcanal. Believe this or not, as we were flying away from our carrier, all you had to do is look over this way, and here's about 40 Japanese planes going this way. We're going this way, and they're going this way. Nobody broke off to shoot at each other. Just kept right on going. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. 2 squadrons of airplanes flying in opposite directions. We ended up over Abe's ship out in Santa Cruz, and we had 1-0 try to ram us, a head-on ram, but we ducked underneath that. When we finally got to the place where we could dive bomb this Japanese cruiser, which old Abe was on, flying this type of airplane, we did something I've never done in an airplane before, and these weren't not designed for it. This is a torpedo plane. My pilot decided that he's going to dive bomb this Japanese cruiser. Okay, he did a beautiful job. He dove down, and here I'm looking back to see where those bombs went. 2 hits on a cruiser. 2 hits on a cruiser. Beautiful. We got up out of our dive and we're flying along to go back to the Hornet. Ensign Hoover comes up in the intercom system and he says, Downing, he says, we don't have any place to land. I said, what's wrong? He says, they just sunk the Hornet. He said, let's do it this way. We'll find one of our own destroyers, and then I'm going to put the tail hook down, and when it starts spanking the water, you tell me, we'll drop it in. Now, from the turret, I could see the tail hook spanking the water. Okay? So we flew around for a while, because we were trying to get the gasoline out of the wing tanks so that the airplane would be more buoyant when we hit the water. But sure enough, he put the tail hook down. As soon as the gas was gone enough, we landed in the water. And along comes the destroyer Preston, picks us up. Guess what happened when I got on board? Can anybody tell me? Sailor came up to me and he said, what? What do you think he said? Come on down to my locker, take any kind of clothes you want. Love. Love. One sailor to another. Love. Then I had another strange thing happen. This man right here, Commander Roger Hedrick, called me up to his office, which was in the same hangar as Cashew 5. And he says, Downing, I'd like to have you come with me on the USS Bunker Hill. I said, Commander, I'm on shore duty. I don't have to go. He says, I know you don't have to go. He says, but I've got 20 enlisted men in this squadron. Here's the pictures. And none of them have ever been on board an aircraft carrier. And you've already got 10 of them. You know about aircraft carriers. I said, can I think about this for one day? He said, yes. Now mind you, I knew we were going back out in combat. Next day I went up, asked his yeoman if I could talk to him, and he said yes. You know what Commander Hedrick told me? You come aboard VF-84 with 36 Corsairs, and I will make you a Chief Petty Officer, and not only that, but you will become my leading chief. Can you imagine the consternation of 4 Chief Petty Officers in that squadron when somebody's promoted right over the top of their heads? I took it. And he was true to his word. He promoted me at a place called 29 Palms, California. How many of you ever heard of 29 Palms, California? That's where I was promoted to Chief Petty Officer. We went out in the Pacific on the USS Bunker Hill. We were instrumental in the strikes on Iwo Jima, on Honshu, and eventually ended up in a place called Ulithi. How many of you ever been to Ulithi? Ulithi is a huge harbor inside of a lot of coral reefs right out near Philippine Islands. It could accommodate hundreds of ships, and sometimes it did. Approximately May 11th, 1945, We're off of Okinawa. All around us, almost every day, are kamikaze planes. I'm standing aft of gun mount number 4 on the flight deck. Gun mount number 4 is the aft gun mount that sits flush with the flight deck. Standing there with a group of my men, happened to look out in the distance, and I saw this airplane coming at us. And it wasn't one of ours. And I hollered, "Kamikaze!" All the gunners ran to their gun mounts. All the rest of my group just stood there and looked. But I turned around and ran all the way up to along the side of the island structure. That airplane hit within 15 feet of where I had been standing. Its bomb went through the flight deck, out through the side of the ship, and into the water and blew up. But the aircraft started many fires on the flight deck. Our pilots were already in the airplanes, getting ready for another strike, sitting there in their airplanes. About the center of the flight deck, there is what they call a bomb elevator. I stopped right there and looked aft, and here's another kamikaze coming. I ran all the way up to number 1 elevator. How many of you know how far that is? About 250 feet to number 1 elevator. That cotton picker hit right where I had been standing when I stopped. I testify to this day, you're looking at a very, very lucky sailor. This list, which was given to me when Libby and I went out to a meeting in Las Vegas, lists those that are killed and wounded on the Bunker Hill. 372 men killed, about 700 injured. Here's the list. Take a look at it. I'm a lucky sailor. I was sent to shore duty. Now I'm going to stop right there. I'd like to know if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to ask me.